Welcome, everyone, to episode 139 of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, horny true crime enthusiast Jared Hornbeck, and I am coming to you from my house, which is conveniently located right next to a cemetery. I mean, yeah, it's, say what you will, it might be creepy, but the property value is fantastic. But I'm not the only person who is scouring foggy old London town. No, who else is here with me?
Well, it's me, Skid Row Quack Steve Guntley, and this is the podcast about AI London, axe-swinging demons, and lesbian murder fantasies, because this is a podcast about Quadrant, one of the most recent Full Moon releases, and one that reunites Charles Band and one of his strongest screenwriters. I'm excited to talk about the work of C. Courtney Joyner once again. I feel like it's been a little bit since we've had one of his movies come up. And we're very excited to be welcoming our special guest today. Jared, who's joining us for this episode?
Yes, we have a very special guest today. He is one half of the writing team of the holiday horror hit The Sacrifice Game, which you might have seen on Shudder in the very recent past. That's probably still on Shudder, I would think. But this is somebody who has worked as a streaming exec as well as a writer for Shudder, worked at FearNet with friend of the show, Scott Weinberg, and Sci-Fi as well. It is Sean Redlitz. Sean, I say this a lot, and this time I'm being very sincere. This has been a long time coming, and I'm glad you're here.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. Jared, Steve, I can feel you receiving me.
No, we were receiving you. We're receiving your weird Jack the Ripper energy through our VR helmets.
Oh, that's what that is. It's unpleasant.
Maybe you have it on backwards.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem. Possible. That's always the problem. Well, we're excited to have you here. What is your kind of personal history with the Full Moon in particular, or is there much?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm a fan of the podcast, and Jared's been talking to me about it for a very long time. So I'm really thrilled that we were finally able to make it happen. And what a great film to talk about, Quadrant. So we'll get there. But as Jared mentioned, I got my start kind of in the entertainment industry working at Sci-Fi. And this was back in the 90s, and Full Moon was a very big staple of what we had on Sci-Fi. So as a kid growing up in Brooklyn, cable came very late to Brooklyn, so I didn't get quite the dose of constant, Reanimator and Subspecies on loop that maybe some kids might have gotten. But when I got to Sci-Fi, I sort of discovered the world of Full Moon because it was a lot of the library, the aforementioned Subspecies, of course. Many others that the Puppet Master series was a perennial staple and ratings favorite. So that was kind of my exposure. I was in the on-air promo department. I was helping the team that was cutting the spots that would tell you what movies to check out in the near future. And the Full Moon ones were always a good time to cut.
That's amazing.
Nice.
And we haven't even commented on it yet, but for people who can't see this transmission at home, Sean is committing to the noir theme. He's the only one of us who is fully committing to Noir-Vember, because that's kind of what we're in right now. You've got the whole, like, black and white filter on you. Yeah, Jared, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about this concept of Noir-Vember?
Sure. Well, this seemed like a fun thing to do, as opposed to other maybe less tasteful ways that people advertise things you can do in November. We were thinking about possibly, Pulp Noir is this fun new kind of sub-label from Charles Band where he said he wants to focus on making movies that are less horror comedies with tiny terrors and evil's bong, etc., and make, somewhat more serious fare. And so I personally am a huge film noir fan as a genre. And to me, the idea sounded great. Let's, take on some of the earlier releases in pulp noir, but also conversely, there are a lot of classic Full Moon and even a few Empire movies that Charles Band has been giving what they're calling like a noir treatment and putting them out on the Full Moon streaming app. So, there are these new movies that started coming out last year, and we'll be covering the first of those movies today. But then there's also movies like Hideous and The Creeps and Transfers that he's been doing this noir treatment about. We talked about trancers, I mean, all the way back in our second episode of the show,
Yeah.
like almost 2.5 years ago. And the Trancers Noir, when that dropped on the app, I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to check this out. Whatever I say about any of the other movies where this has been implemented or any of the pulp noir movies, I don't really feel like it works for Trancers, because Trancers, while it has noir elements, to me, like, so much of the appeal of that movie is kind of the neon, unspecifically placed future where a lot of that movie takes
Yeah,
place,
yeah. The
and
very
it gets sort of muddied in black and white. But some of the movies that resemble more universal monsters type things, like Hideous and the Creeps, actually fare pretty well in black and white.
yeah.
And I will say the one that I want to see the most in black and white, because of its universal monsters connection, would be Puppet Master 2.
Actually, yeah. I think that would be a super fun one. Yeah, no, I agree. I think Trancers has this great like premium picture day backdrop sort of quality that you really want, like yeah, that's right. Give me the grid with the lasers, like that. You really want that with your Trancers. You don't necessarily need the rich color palette of Romanian winter in Hideous. I think it works pretty well for what they're trying to do. And I think it kind of works pretty well for this movie, which is a strange concoction. I'm kind of excited to get into it. This is one of the most recent movies that we were talking about. And fittingly enough for Noir-Vember, it is the first film in the Pulp Noir series that was released. It's, of course, not the first one we've covered. We talked about Death Streamer in the past. We kind of went a little out of order on that, as we are wont to do. But this is the very first one. And so far, it's only been those two. But we have a couple more coming. They're in the works, allegedly. And anytime like Full Moon launches one of these big initiatives, you can kind of expect that like one or two are going to drop off or change or become something else. But we do have these two. So let's talk about this movie, Quadrant, which was released August 24th, 2024. It's directed by Charles Band. It's written by C. Courtney Joyner. And it stars Shannon Helene Barnes, Christian Kerrigan, Emma Reinagel, Rickard Clayson, Kayleen Snarsky, Lexi Lore, and Christophen Warren Stevens playing Jack the Ripper. That's a great name, Christophen. I've never heard that before. But yes, as we said, Quadrant is the first official release in Full Moon's latest Pulp Noir initiative. These are grittier, nastier, meaner horror films than they have been releasing for a little bit. So future releases include Subscriber, which we just talked about recently because it's going to be directed by Charlie Band's youngest son, Zalman Band. We have movies like Subhuman, Models versus Werewolves, and I'm not clear if this was renamed. Yeah, I'm not sure if this was renamed from Bad CGI Werewolves or if we're getting that one too. I'm not really clear. I need to dig
I think we're getting both.
Bit.
I think Bad CGI Werewolves is also on the way.
It is boon times for CGI werewolves. I'm very excited for it. We also have Zombie Hotel, Surprise Party, The Lost Girls Private Diary, Svengali, and just this June, Charlie announced a new movie called Prompt, which is yet another AI-tinged thriller. Now, we're going to be talking about AI a lot. Once again, we did this with Amy, of course, which is a movie that absolutely makes sense to talk about this AI discussion. But I just want to put, before we get into a lot of that, I just want to put like Charles Band's own words into context. This is a quote from a recent Full Moon Universe vidcast on YouTube. And he said, "I don't see Full Moon making a movie only in AI because human beings can't be replaced, but using it as an effect or storytelling tool can be exciting." So I think he has some good perspective on what he's kind of playing around with here. But the thing that freaks me out a little bit about Quadrant, more so than the spooky content, is this sense of this mantra that's come up over and over. I've said it multiple times. If you want to know where the history or the future of media is going to be, look at two places. Look at pornography and look at whatever the hell Charles Band is doing, because they are the ones that are going to be ahead of the curve on new technology. And the fact that Charles Band is embracing AI filmmaking so early just really bums me out.
Yeah, I mean, we take what he says at face value, but, I feel like he's not really beholden to anyone to hold him to those words. So it's like, right now he's saying like, okay, sure. Yeah. Like, I think AI is kind of a cool tool that you can have for storytelling and for some effects, but obviously like people can't be replaced. Part of me feels like 5 years down the road is just like, oh wait, I don't have to pay people.
Right,
Cool.
right. Yeah. I mean, but at least I think, and I don't want to be like putting words in the man's mouth because I really don't know him, but he does seem like a guy who really enjoys the collaborative nature of movie making. I think he likes having people around. I think he likes actors, so I can understand why he would be loath to kind of embrace a wholly CGI creation. Not to mention that we've had a few of them and they're unwatchably terrible. I don't know if y'all saw there's a trailer floating around out there for a Filipino film. I think it's just called Nuclear Winter. That's entirely generative AI. And it looks like something else. I mean, am I going to watch it 10 million times? Obviously I'm going to, but yeah, I don't know. Sean, where do you come to? You're a filmmaker. You've been in the industry for a little bit. Where do you come down on the use of kind of generative AI in movie making?
I have some pretty strong negative feelings about it, but I'll start with something a little bit less strong, which is to say that I can understand how it can be used as a tool to enhance the things you're already doing and to let you extend your creativity and your art in a little bit further. I can also understand how if you're 15 years old and you want to make a horror movie and you don't have access to anything except maybe your phone, you could do some pretty cool stuff and impress your friends. The environmental impact, the fact that it's built upon theft, there's the all the people it's putting out of work, including friends of mine, like that. Those are really, really terrible consequences. And I don't know that we as a society have figured out how we're going to get our hands on this, not just for entertainment, but in general. But I sort of can't fault Charles Band for being Charles Band. I think about American International Pictures and Sam Arkoff and Roger Corman, and we'll come up with a poster, and then we'll make a movie that tries to do justice to the poster, which they never did. None of the movies, the monsters in the movies, ever looked as good as in their rubber suit glory as the monsters on the poster.
Yeah.
Now we're in a world. Take such humanoids from the deep slander.
Isn't that weird that humanoids from the deep was the first thing that popped into my head too? I don't know why.
It's one that's a pretty watchable film, but I don't think that you get quite what you were promised at the door. So I feel like AI is kind of the next step in that evolution, where we don't even have someone will come up with a concept and then it's like, well, we'll just let the machine figure it out. We'll stick it in the movie.
Right.
So I get where that's coming from, but I would say that I think Charles Band cares a little bit more about the filmmaking maybe than Sam Arkoff might have back in the day, where he's just shoveling these things to drive-ins and assuming they will be burned and forgotten as soon as he retitles them 3 more times, gives them another few runs, and then exhausts every dollar he can get from them.
Right. That's the thing people forget about those old B movies, is that they were not intended to be preserved. They were not intended for perpetuity. Like, it's kind of a weird fluke of nature that a lot of those movies exist.
Let alone to be paused and looked at on your 4K Blu-ray.
Right. Right.
Yeah, they were never meant for that, but God bless us, we now can do all those things.
Hell yeah.
Without maybe we'll dive right into the movie, but one of the disappointments for me of the film is just that when you're doing a movie about dreams, I want to see visionary dreams. Low budget, high budget. This is actually kind of dream lab, sleep lab horror is an undersung subgenre that I happen to be really fond of. I would say, of course, we all know Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors. That's maybe the holy grail there. I know you guys have covered Shadow Zone some time ago.
Yeah, we did.
And I was just at the theater the other night to see a screening of Somnium, Rachel Kane's new movie. That's another dream lab, sleep lab. What if computers could change your brain and change your reality kind of movie? And when I see these kind of movies, I want to see what a filmmaker could do with whatever limited budget they have to show me their idea of what a nightmare is, to show me their Lynchian, strange, weird, or Fellini-esque dream, like whatever their thing is, that's what I want to see. And, this movie, while I have lots of things that I like about it, I will say that, every time they cut to a monster attacking in a dream, I was just like, this is so... I've seen this 1,000 times. This is chewed up and redigested and regurgitated onto the screen. Kind of pulled me out of it.
I'm watching the cover of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark come to life.
You really are. You really are. It's I will. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's one of those things like pretty much across the board with AI. I think there are things that we can be doing with it that are useful and helpful, and we're just not doing those things. We are, the great tweet that I saw like years ago, I don't know when it was, but it's like, oh, great, AI can automate our work and our paperwork and our taxes so that we have more time to focus on art and music. And instead, we're using it to automate our art and music so we have more time for paperwork and taxes. Like we're putting it the exact wrong order. Like people talk about, like, it was kind of a big controversy last year when they revealed that The Brutalist used a little bit of AI just as kind of like to correct, like to make a Turkish or a Hungarian accent more regionally specific to where he came from. People got upset about that. I think that's a good example of something you could be doing, like to enhance your movie, like a very, very small, subtle tweak that just kind of gives you that little bit extra, like, authenticity. Like, I think that's a smart use of it. I don't think what they're using
for the
AI
Hungarian audience, because I didn't know the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
why evaporate several gallons of water just to make his Hungarian accent slightly better for all the Hungarian speakers on the planet? Was that worth it?
There's an argument to be made there too, but I think that Quadrant is kind of an example of a movie where I think the AI is actively working against what I think is actually a pretty good movie. Like, it's really kind of torpedoing a promising setup because it looks immediately cheap, it looks immediately phony, and it's like it's that really bad like AI where like it can't form letters and like images are like morphing into other images. There's no intentionality behind it.
There were scenes I thought that looked pretty good. And I will say, even within the AI, there were moments when the AI sort of worked. And then there were times when we just took a hard pivot right into Neil Breen town.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I kept thinking Neil Breen the entire time whenever they're on these horrible green screens.
Well, I watched the movie on Tubi, and God bless Tubi for their vast and deep catalog. And if I'm just flipping around, and I don't know if I'm invested in this movie, I was watching it for a purpose. We're here today to discuss it.
Yeah.
But if you start me in a movie on screensaver of Victorian London, then I'm probably not sticking around. Like, I feel like that opening was not inspiring, that whole credit sequence and into that first scene.
It works against it because I think you give the movie a little bit of charity and you forgive it a little bit for beginning that way when you recognize that whole introduction is a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're going to keep returning to the simulations in the movie, then they should look better than that. You mentioned Tubi, Sean, and I was just thinking we were talking about like sleep horror and like experimental dream stuff. And I was on Tubi a few months ago and I came across a movie I'd never heard of that I watched that was kind of a neat little movie called Night Wish. And it stars Brian Thompson and someone that Steve and I have talked about a lot on this show, Elizabeth Caton. And it's basically like two couples who are like grad students, and they go to this kind of remote cabin where their professor has like a house that has this sensory deprivation like tank thing set up where they want to, and supernatural bad stuff happens in it. It's actually kind of a neat little B movie. It's one of those movies where it's like, because it's a super low budget movie, there is a lot of the time is spent like the characters walking and talking or driving and talking to each other. And then also it's like Elizabeth Caton and the other female lead like often go into the sensory deprivation tank with just like a white tank top and nothing else on.
Sure.
So when they come out looking like it's a wet t-shirt contest a lot of the time. But it was kind of a neat little movie. And I find this subgenre of horror to be an interesting one. And there are, like you said, there are these kind of movies that have been done to death in terms of like psychoanalysis of dreams and stuff. And I thought the concept, what separates Quadrant is a very interesting one, but you're totally right in like what an opportunity you could have had to have an artist really shine in making some these dream set pieces or the Victorian London set pieces too. Instead, it ends up looking like a cheap screensaver a lot of the time. And then because of that, it's like there's almost this like uh, lack of rendering depth or something that makes it, then it takes away what I think of when I think of noirish elements. When
Right.
there were scenes of just characters talking that were in the real world, occasionally shots were staged and framed in ways that there was some shadow, there were some things that made it feel like it was a movie that potentially could have been shot on black and white film as opposed to just, a movie that was shot digitally and then had a
Right.
black and white filter over it, which I guess is as good a time as any to say, like, I love, we can get into plot specifics of this movie in a moment, but I love film noir. I love the aesthetics of film noir. I love the tropes of film noir. And so it's not something we get to bring up all that much on the show outside of the occasional reference. So since this is the first episode of our Noir-Vember, I'll quickly just say I worked with a guy. I mean, my dad was a big like cinephile when I was a kid too and loved a lot of those films. But I
Yeah.
worked with a guy when I was about 26, 27 years old who really introduced me to it as a genre. And
Yeah.
he sort of was like, okay, I'm going to give you like a short list of movies to seek out. And these are kind of the quintessential ones. And so I watched like Double Indemnity, and I watched the one that to this day remains my favorite noir, which is Out of the Past.
Hmm.
Jacques Tourneur's Out of the Past.
Yeah.
I watched Gun Crazy with Peggy Cummins and John Dahl, which is a terrific noir with some really cutting edge camera techniques at the time. And then, other ones too, like I would stuff with Bogart in it. I don't know if I consider Casablanca a noir per se. I mean, it is, but it's sort of, when I think of noir, I think of like an RKO or B studio movie, and Casablanca
Sure.
obviously is a major studio movie. But
Yeah.
all those Edward G. Robinson ones too, like I love that stuff, and I felt very hard for the genre to where then I was just going through and kind of consuming all of those too. So the Venn diagram of film noir and low budget horror does not always have a meaty center. So like for you guys, it's like aside from researching for this show, is this a genre that you guys have a lot of appreciation for? Because I know for myself and Steve, it's not a subgenre or a genre we talk about much on the show. So I'm curious just a little bit of your history with the genre. So what expectations you were taking into Quadrant?
I'll go first. I think I'm not as versed as you are, Jared, but I'm definitely a huge fan. And whenever there's an opportunity, especially to see those 40s and 50s black and white film projected on screen, on film ideally, there's something about the shadows and the texture of really great noir cinematography that is just
Mhm.
spectacular. You mentioned a bunch of my favorites. I'll throw in Detour as well there. Edgar G. Ulmer's Detour. Great movie. A lot of these movies are like a hot 65, 70 minutes as well. So they
Oh,
share
yeah.
that in common with
The Narrow Margin. I don't know if you know the original, not the Gene Hackman remake, like the original one is, I think it's like 70 minutes. And so is one of the first instances that I can think of a movie shot in real time, The Setup with Robert
sure.
Ryan, which is a terrific noir about like a boxer who has to like throw a fight for the mob. And the whole movie takes place over like a 70-minute period. And that's the length of the film. And it's amazing.
That sounds great. I'll mention some that maybe are on the borders. I would say Wells's Touch of Evil, I feel like is noir adjacent. I would say Charles Lawton's Night of the Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Not a classic noir in that you're following it from the point of view of children, and the villain is a preacher, and but it's such a, to me, it also kind of falls near that. The Big Sleep, maybe Sunset Boulevard might count.
I think that one counts. Yeah, fully. Yeah.
I'm probably more versed in neo-noirs. So everything from, Polanski's Chinatown to like, Jeremy Saulnig's Blue Ruin. Like, there's a whole host of great movies that have come out in the last 3 or 4 or 5 decades that carry that tradition on, even though they're not from the classic noir period.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Yeah, no, I've just always loved the genre. I don't remember what my introduction to it was. It was honestly probably Bugs Bunny, if I'm being real. Like I think I learned about these tropes like through old Looney Tunes cartoons, and then when I saw them in the movies, I'm just like, oh man, these are so cool.
Or
Like,
I would say, Steve, it maybe was Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
could be Roger. Yeah, could honestly be Roger Rabbit. Yeah, yeah. I would not. I mean, that movie fully counts. Yeah. Favorites of mine. Yeah, you mentioned a lot of my favorites. When I was like in my kind of budding like cinephile years, and I was like really pretentious about it, I discovered like a lot of French noir films that I think like are unbelievable. Jacques Tourneur comes from that world, and so we get like Rififi or Touche Bob Grisby or fucking I'm forgetting the other one. Bob the Flambour, like lots of really amazing like kind of noir tinged French movies. I'm not big time in anybody by dropping a bunch of French titles. Just kind of want to
No, but one thing has become
diversity.
abundantly clear is that we need to go outside the umbrella of the show and just proposition Eddie Muller to come be a guest.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I've been on a big like Coen Brothers kick lately, and they do so many amazing like noir films. No Country for Old Men is fully like a noir film meets a chase film, and it's unbelievable. Like I have not revisited that movie in 15 years, and it is so good. It holds up so well.
I would even say Barton Fink could be sort of a surreal noir.
Totally, yeah. Barton Fink, The Man Who Wasn't There, very clearly is a film noir. Blood Simple, obviously.
Blood Simple,
yeah. No, lots of great ones. I don't know if I'm going to call Quadrant one of the great ones, but I do say, and I think too many movies like to throw the term like modern noir around, like if the movie's just kind of like a little dark, or if it's in this case like a retrofit to be in black and white. Like to be clear, I like the black and white in this. Like that's the version I watched. That was the one that came up on Tubi first, and I think it suits this movie very well. That being said, I don't think it's a traditional noir. It is notably darker both in tone and in like execution than a lot of Full Moon that we've gotten recently, and we said the same thing about Death Streamer as well. So like the pulp noir brand has been consistent in that way so far. This is dealing with some heavier stuff, and I think the cool story behind it is that C. Courtney Joyner came back into the Full Moon fold to write this. I don't know what the last movie he worked on was, but we've covered him several times in the past. He's the director of Lurking Fear, kind of the shadow director of Trancers 3. He also wrote screenplays for Puppet Master 3, which is maybe the best Full Moon movie there is. Dr. Mordred, a bunch of different cool movies that came up over the course of the show. Mega Scorpions might have been the last one of his that we talked about.
Right, and that's so funny because that's one that on the surface, it's like, it sounds like we're listing like legitimate projects, and then we're like, oh yeah, and then there's Mega Scorpions, and like Mega Scorpions was a lot of fun, and had this touch to it.
Yeah, no, I had no problem with that movie. I had a good time with it. But like, he's a guy who I think understands genre very, very well. He's a novelist outside of like his film work, So like, I think he understands these tropes better than most anyone. And I am confirming right now that the last thing he worked on for Full Moon was Puppet Masters versus Demonic Toys, which was the sci-fi original movie that we haven't gotten to yet. But yeah, so it's been a good chunk. That movie was 2004, so it's been a full 20 years since C. Courtney Joyner has written for them, and it's cool to have him back. You can kind of tell already the story is very like Philip K. Dick tinged. It's got that kind of neo-futurist sort of big idea sci-fi kind of premise. But the one thing that kept popping in my head, just one specific, I don't know if you guys do this, if like you ever have like just movie quotes pop into your head like when you're responding to something, but the one that is popping into my head watching this movie was Ringo Starr in the movie Pop Star saying they're treating this like gay marriage wasn't allowed. It's allowed now. All I kept thinking was like, oh, they're acting like VR isn't a thing now. VR is a thing now. We have a very clear idea of what a VR headset looks like, and it is not a deep sea diving helmet with like cables connected to a wall. Like it is. I have an Oculus Rift in the other room. It just fits snugly on my head.
Steve, you're missing an integral part of this, which is that if you're going to go back to foggy old London town, you've got to look steampunk.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you definitely do. You got to look steampunk. So that's definitely a calculation in this as well. And it's one of those things like I wish, they clearly saved a little money using AI for the special effects on this. If they wanted to go full steampunk, if they wanted to make this like a City of Lost Children or something like that, pour a little money into the production value because we get that helmet. That's so weird. Yeah.
I'm going to step up and say I kind of like the production design. I thought the
Okay.
helmet was fun. Keep in mind, it's not just going into your eyes like the Oculus Rift. It's also going into your brain. So there's got to be some extra hardware for that. It also plugs into the back of your neck. There was a random, I think, TV antenna sitting behind the characters for some reason. It felt almost like
It's
it
like
was
the
trying
helmet.
Oil. Yeah.
yeah,
It's like the helmet
Tesla
of the
coil kind of thing. Yeah,
it's the helmet of the Great Gazoo.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
Yeah.
very, very much. And then later on in the film, and spoilers, whatever. Ripper Aaron, dressed like Coffin Joe, comes down a freaking freight elevator with like a folding gate. I'm like, that's production value. If you have access to a freight elevator, absolutely put it in your movie because it looked awesome. She could have just walked in the door, but no, she's descending in a steampunky kind of freight elevator, which is like, yeah. So, hats off. I appreciate the touches that were there, even though the AI stuff did not do it for me.
And I did too, and that's kind of why I wish they'd pushed it a little further, because I kept bumping on the fact that the main character Erin, who is this like deeply troubled woman who's obsessed with Jack the Ripper, and eventually her obsession overtakes her. They style her like very basic, like they style her with just like a big baggy sweater, and like they like there's no like expressionistic costuming unless they're doing like an All American Girl thing. Yes, Sean.
Do we think she provided her own wardrobe?
Yes,
including those boots.
I guarantee this is just like the clothes she came in off the street in, and I think they should have taken just like one. And again, I'm backseat driving on this thing because like the movies that I tend to do that to are the ones that I like and saw the potential in there for them to be really good, and it just like fell short in a couple of areas. So I'm nitpicking a little bit, but I just feel like a little bit more commitment to the dark and gothic sort of vibe that they're going for would have gone a long way.
Yeah, and I also I want to highlight a couple of artistic choices that I think were C. Courtney Joyner's and not Charles Band.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them I think is I like the idea that Quadrant is this immersive therapy to make you feel your worst, essentially, to face your fears. It's almost like Quadrant exists as the Bizarro San Junipero treatment.
Kinda, yeah.
It's like
that's
it's the exact opposite of that. But I like also that somebody sort of, because like you said, Steve, anytime there's advancement in technology, people will find a way to make it porn.
Exactly.
And like I like the fact that this Erin character is misusing like what the therapy is supposed to be for.
Yes.
I also like the fact that it's very pointedly, I don't want to give so much credit in the sense that this is really making a statement about stuff going on in the present, but I think the fact that it is like this woman of agency doing the killing and manipulating the machine is definitely not by accident. I think that's by design, and I like that choice. I like the fact that Erin is the character as opposed to just a male character who is obsessed with Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
But I also feel like maybe those people don't really exist, and this is kind of just trolling the hosts of My Favorite Murder and every other true crime podcast, which are disproportionately white women talking about, vicious murder. But I liked those choices, and I will say, I kind of dug the lead performance. Like I thought she was going for it. Like I thought she's really. I mean, again, when you work in B movies, and I think one of the things that is important to mention that we always talk about how cheaply and quickly these movies were made, but like though we talked about that when we were talking about movies that were shot on 35, being this is like this was probably done for even a fraction of what we could covered as some of the micro budgets. And so you're not going to you get sort of like character types. You get the doctor, his assistant, you get the other patient who's sort of nondescript. And Erin is really the only one who's like fleshed out in a way where she's given stuff to do. But I kind of like the energy that she brings to it.
I just want to, I agree with you. I'm seconding the Shannon Barnes as Erin. I thought she was great as, manic pixie Ripper girl. I think she has to hit a lot of notes. I think you want to believe that she's just a true crime fan, and maybe something, whether it's Quadrant unlocks something within her or Quadrant changed something about her. The movie isn't entirely clear on that, but you have this journey where she goes to recognizing that she has strong sexual desires or strong other fantasy desires about killing primarily women, but not exclusively women. And I bought all of that, and I bought the seduction of the Rob character. So yeah, I also wanted to say I think Christian Kerrigan does a pretty good job as Robert. It is hard to be a weak male character in a horror movie and not immediately lose the audience. Nightmare on Elm Street 2, go back to Mark Patton for that. Like, anytime he has to show a lot of vulnerability, he has to show fear, he has to show dependence on her, he has to show confusion. He's got a lot of notes to play. And while I'm not going to say that this was like Oscar nominee material here, I thought he acquitted himself really well in what I imagine was a pretty quick production with little rehearsal time and probably maybe 2 takes. So, I thought the two of them were very strong. I don't feel quite the same about the other 2 performers, whose characters are also, I think, a little underdeveloped. But hey, 2 out of 4 ain't bad. So I think I'll take that.
No, I agree. I thought the performances were solid. I thought like the story idea is solid, and that's why I found it so frustrating that so much of the action in this movie was condensed into these just really shoddy looking AI sequences, like that seem like library images to the extent that you can have like AI generated library images. Like this is, Robert, his kind of defining characteristic is, to quote the name of a movie I've never seen before, a fantastic fear of everything. He is frightened of basically everything that walks and moves and also doesn't exist. Like, he's just terrified of zombies and werewolves and like fog. Like this machine, this Quadrant, also like that is referring to the name of the machine. It doesn't really make sense for the theme of this movie, but either way. This machine kind of accesses your fears and forces you to like literally face your fears in an attempt to conquer them. And when we're seeing that, it is him fighting fantasy monsters. And I'm just like, dude, are you afraid of fantasy monsters, or are these a representation, or is this just kind of the soulless lack of imagination of the AI machine that is generating like
pet peeve. My biggest nitpick of the movie is that sometimes, just because you can do doesn't mean you should do. Exactly. And it's like, for this one, I think they were probably like, oh, well, we can, we'll have all of this generative AI to kind of just cook up whatever horrific monster idea we can do. I mean, typically fears are manifestations of something. So there would be like a situation, or it would be something where Rob, the character, can't control what's happening around him, or there's all these other things here, or like somebody is coming up and pulling all of his teeth out. I don't know, I had that dream all the time. But like the fact that it went to literal monsters, I immediately was like, this is an instance where they're like, let's see what we can get from this AI. It doesn't really make any sense story-wise, because I don't really think that that's not how people experience their fears. Like, it's not, maybe a child saw a scary monster in a movie and has nightmares where they picture that monster's face. But, as adults, it's like, okay, maybe I have a fear of a lack of control. Okay, well, what's happening in your dreams? I have a master's degree, and yet somehow I have dreams all the time that I'm late for a final and I'm not going to graduate college.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand why.
It's anxiety. Yeah, that's why, like, weirdly, I think one of the more, for me, vivid and accurate depiction of like what a nightmare feels like is Aronofsky's Mother with Jennifer Lawrence. Like, that movie, because that movie is just like nonstop intrusions and like people ignoring you, or people like not listening to you or trivializing you. Like, it's playing on psychological weaknesses and not like a ghost, a spooky bat. Like, it's not. That's so much more interesting. And
I think we just have to assume that this movie takes place in a universe in which demons, zombies, and other forms of monsters really exist. This guy accidentally got lost in the woods one day and was attacked by every monster around, and it's traumatized him. It's the PTSD that he's living with. I think that makes perfect sense.
It was his own fault for wandering into a monster mash in progress. You have to be careful of those things. Read the posted signage.
But I totally agree, and that was the biggest thing that kind of would take me out of the movie, because there was actually I will go to bat for one of the CGI or AI, I should say, rendered sequences. And it was one of the early, not the very beginning, not the intro to the movie, because like Sean said, my actual initial instinct was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like the way this looks. And then it was revealed to be the simulation, and it looked better. And I was kind of like, okay, well, I hope that when we go back into Quadrant again, we get some better looking sequences, which we don't necessarily, but there was one that was moderately effective to me. And it was almost like, the artwork of Barbara Steele's eyes from the cover of like Black Sunday?
Yeah, yeah.
It was the one where like all the faces were kind of yelling and they kind of turned like ghostly. I thought that one looked cool. And I was like, all right, that one looks a lot better. When it got to be these like, I don't even know, they looked like burnt up sort of like zombies that were changing shape, and their facial expressions were changing. That was losing me a little bit. But it was like, because what I also liked about the one, I don't know how to refer to it, but like of the screaming faces of the people, kind of ghostly faces, was it was quick. Like it cut to it, it's like ooh, 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 a couple seconds, and it cut away. So it wasn't like lingering on the AI too. So that's why I was kind of like, oh, all right, that effect is decent. But it's probably because I feel like a lot of the other ones, because then there's other times where he's having like a full blown like AI equivalent of like a Jason and the Argonauts sword battle with like these things, and they're on screen being rendered for too long.
Yeah.
So it's like, not only do they not particularly look convincing, but they're also on screen for a long time.
Yeah.
And then cut to him swinging a knife, and then cut back to another one, and then cut to him swinging a knife.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of that. I mean, I'm going to give it credit for being as advertised, like pretty dark and gory, and lots of TNA, and lots of it's one of the more sexually explicit movies we've encountered in a little bit, so they're kind of ramping that up a little. So again, like it's an interesting attempt to rebrand, and I'm not like off board with it yet. I'm just kind of like, I am frustrated by just the AI-ness of kind of the direction the company's headed at the moment, and that's, hey, prove me wrong.
I never really thought about this before, until we started having this conversation. And when I say this conversation, I don't mean this recording. I mean this sort of like cultural conversation about generative AI. I work in a school. I teach elementary school. I teach math, and so the way that I differentiate math is I have hands-on materials, manipulatives, things like that.
Yeah.
What some of the ELA teachers and speech providers and academic intervention service providers and people started doing was taking our I guess you would call them focal text or highlighted text from the different reading units, and chat GPTing like less complicated versions of it, because we have such a varied population. Some of them are English language learners, some of them are kids who are just picking up and progressing slower than other students do. A lot of the New York City ELA curriculum is written at or above grade level, so a lot of the texts that they encounter are too complicated for what, but that's in terms of decoding. They can comprehend the texts if it's read to them, if they listen to the text. So what they've been using ChatGPT for is, and not a ton, but occasionally, are for like more developmentally appropriate versions of the text for kids to decipher.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, and I was wrestling with that a little bit, because my gut instinct is to say just a big no to anything generative AI. Like that's my in people talk about. I mean, unless I sort of went middle of the road on like I don't know, like Late Night with the Devil with those title cards.
Yeah.
I kind of like I understand why some people were upset, but I don't think it really like they probably didn't need to do it AI. Someone could have created them by hand. It really didn't add anything to the movie having those title cards. But I understand
And they
people's
were
issues.
I think they were done at a time before we had the current perception of the
Correct.
harms that generative AI has done. So I don't know that they would approach it the same way now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
now I just
it's
kind
hard.
of yeah, now I look at it like there are these benefits that aren't obvious at first, but then even before deciding to go along with it or deciding to endorse it or use it, I also find myself thinking about the environmental repercussions of it. And so it's a conversation that I think is going to probably continue for a while with no real definitive stance that is 100% correct. Like that's at least where I am now. I think as it pertains to the arts, it's like I would much rather see uh, graphic artists and you know, visual artists or people who are production designers create things that look beautiful and have the stamps and marks of a, you know, a human being
Yeah.
on them. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And,
can understand where this generative AI is somewhat helpful in, you know, and I'm torn.
well, let me take it one step further, though. In addition to the other ills that we mentioned about generative AI, in the past, this would have been somebody's job.
Yeah.
Maybe even 8 years ago, maybe Charles Band would have gone on YouTube and found some kid in somewhere on the planet who's doing cool stuff on his computer that he could pay pennies on the dollar for and get something cool in return. And that kid maybe goes on to have a career because now he's got a film credit and maybe he does more work with him and maybe he comes to America and learns that who knows. I'm drawing a whole story here,
Sure.
but so many entry level jobs are the kind of work that's being outsourced to AI, and those people no longer have entry ramps to those careers that they would have had, or they'll have to find a different way in, and there may not be another way. So while as an audience member, I want to appreciate an artistic vision of somebody who's got something to say through their cool animation or scary creature effect. And honestly, as a fan, I have to believe Charles Band has a basement full of old monster costumes and puppets that he could just fucking shoot
Oh, of
in a
course.
weird way and create a nightmare sequence of that would have been 10 times better than what he showed us. But, I'm also concerned about the next generation coming up and where will they get their jobs if these jobs don't exist.
My real question is, do we think Lloyd Kaufman will ever adopt this? Because I feel like one kind of leg up that Troma may have on this is that Troma is like still very much married to the practical effect aspect of their movie making. And
Right.
so like even though like the recent Toxic Avenger might have included some CGI stuff in it, the majority of the gore and effects in that is still very practical.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, Full Moon and Troma are always kind of talked about in the same breath as these two sort of maverick, low budget independent studios. And it's like Charles Band's temperament is, I think he's kind of fascinated by where technology would go. Lloyd always feels to me like he just wants to keep it really punk rock and bare bones.
Right. And I was kind of not really surprised, but we recently had Debbie Rochon on the show, and she talked a lot about Troma, obviously, because she's an integral part of the Troma family. And she kind of mentioned something that I hadn't really considered before, which is that like Lloyd Kaufman actually really takes his time with his movies. Like Charles Band is kind of a machine, he's turning out, Quadrant by some counts is his 400th movie, which is pretty wild. So he churns them out like much faster than Lloyd Kaufman does. Like that's not to say that Lloyd is like super meticulous about his work necessarily, but he has a vision and he gives his movies a little air and a little bit more of a budget. So like that was something that kind of didn't really occur to me. And I think that's a sign of somebody who enjoys like the making of rubber monsters. That's somebody who likes to build something. There's you're right. There's kind of an anarchic spirit to Troma's whole vibe where like Charles Band is a carnival barker and Lloyd Kaufman is like an obnoxious Catskills stand-up comedian. You know, they're both trying to get a reaction in a way, and it's yeah.
I agree with you about the production side, and I'm by no means an expert on Lloyd Kaufman, nor would I be able to speak to what's going on inside his head. But I wonder if you were given the opportunity to feed every trauma script ever into a large language model that would just train on trauma scripts and could generate 10 or 100 or 500 more trauma scripts, one of which he might think, oh, this is great, we haven't done something like this yet. Would he do that? I don't know, maybe.
I wonder what the word that comes up the most would be. That's a real question. It would probably just be the F word, but yeah, you have to wonder sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, it just kind of like puts a little bit of a stink on this movie that I otherwise like am kind of on board with. Like I like the actors and I like the setup, and I'm just sort of like, I'm watching this and I'm thinking like, I can't shake the idea that this is like the future that the AI tech bros want for us. Like this is the movie making process that they want for us. And I'm just so not on board. I am well off board. Yeah, because you could just tell. You can just tell.
I mean, I like the. I mean, it was maybe a little predictable and cliche to have sort of like the only color be kind of crimson red of blood. A Schindler's List style. And like I saw that coming, and I'm like, okay, I get why they did that. I will say, unlike how I feel like some of the gore looked in Sin City, I like the fact that the blood was not bright red.
Yeah.
I liked the fact that it was very kind of dark crimson. I thought was cool. I thought that was a good choice. I think, your instinct, if you're juxtaposing to black and white, would be to oversaturate it or have it too bright. But they didn't do that. And I thought, like, there is, for some of the more recent, well, I don't want to say for some of the more recent full moon stuff, because some of the kind of full moon horror comedy stuff, like the Evil Bongs and movies like that, there's definitely, or Ouija's, Ginger Weed Man, all that. There's definitely lots of like gratuitous nudity at times. It's definitely like winking and being like, hey, look, we're giving you what you want kind of feel. And I think like maybe that attitude is beneath the surface here, but like it does give you, like, if you're somebody who's watching this and you're a fan of the fact that horror movies often have topless women in them, and in one instance bottomless women here, bottomless women sounds like I'm talking about like in just a buffet line of women, which is not my intention, so I apologize for that, everyone. But like I think it has some cool blood splatter and some gore. It definitely never veers into winking or any of the like that. I like how it is juxtaposed to the very self-referential latter-day full moon comedies, because a lot of them are made very knowing, very meta, very winky, and self-deprecating in some ways. But I like that it's kind of just, they're just making a straightforward movie here. They do have sort of a easily telegraphed, left open for a sequel ending to this movie, which, we'll see. I thought about it, and I don't know that I necessarily feel like Quadrant is a movie that needs a sequel, but I do think where I felt like this type of movie would have been at its best is like this seemed like this played like if it was maybe a few minutes shorter, would have played like a very interesting episode of a serialized TV show.
Yeah.
You could just be like, oh, the one with the VR helmet that let people, and it's got that sort of like time travel-y quantum leap feeling to it also. So it could have been like, oh yeah, remember the one with the Jack the Ripper girl and the helmet? Oh yeah, that one was pretty cool. Like that's kind of how this plays, and I think it works in that setting more even maybe as a standalone feature film. And I keep thinking, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but like with the conversation of AI, I'm just thinking of like how cool it could have been if someone built like authentic looking Victorian London sets, and then they cut to Quadrant and it's on these like really meticulously like detailed Victorian sets. It would have just looked so cool because there would have been so much depth and shadow instead of something that just looks flat and unrealistic. Like
Right.
people can
Yeah.
stand on an actual stoop and like, or walk on, actual sidewalk, and they're not sort of like it doesn't look like they're superimposed over an image. Like that's what I was thinking watching it. I'm like, oh man, like some I agree with you, Sean. I think I liked a lot of aspects of the production design and art direction of the movie, but I feel like this movie would have been served by practical effects. And to echo what Steve said earlier, it actually is hindered by the AI.
Yeah.
I have one more thing I like that I want to shout
Mhm.
out since you mentioned gratuitous nudity. I guess this is as good a time as any.
Sure.
Not the gratuitous nudity, although there was a time and place in many of our lives where that would have been appreciated. The internet has kind of supplanted the need for horror movies to service that audience in exactly the same way, but there you have it. But the character of Guitar Girl, who is there to be topless and killed, like so many others, played by, I'm going to try to get this name right, Kayleen Snarsky.
Yes.
I thought that for a role that is barely there, she has a few lines, really just one scene. I kind of felt like I believed that this is a person who lives in a box and plays music on the street and has an inner life. And so I looked her up, and it turns out she's going to be in, or is already in, Mickey Reese's new movie, Every Heavy Thing, which by the time this episode drops, I will have just watched at Brooklyn Horror Film Fest, along with Barbara Crampton is in that and some other great folks. So I hope she gets to do a little more in that, but I thought she made her one scene really pay, and I thought that was a great job.
Excellent.
That movie looks really cool. It's Barbara and it's Josh Fadem, who's kind of like this underground like comedy LA guy who does amazing stuff, and it's like kind of a weird noir. It looks awesome. Yeah. So that's cool. I'm glad that she's in that. I agree. I thought she had like some integrity to her. Like they didn't doll her up like they did with poor I believe the actress's name is Lexi Lore, who's the murdered prostitute inside Quadrant, where they digitally added dirt to her face and it kind of distorted her jawline and made it look like she had a goiter. Like I felt really bad for her. Like they did. Luckily they did not do that to the Guitar Girl, and she's just like, hey, this is a basic human being who knows that water exists. But yeah, I think we've said about all we can say on Quadrant. Sean, thank you so much for being here.
This was so much fun. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for being here. Do you have anything that you're working on that you'd like to point people's attention to? Anything you'd like to plug?
Well, Christmas is coming up, so if you're a Christmas horror fan and you're putting together a Christmas horror list, please consider The Sacrifice Game. We made it with a lot of love in 2022, 2023 up in Montreal. Jared is holding up his copy of it. Thank you for purchasing that. It's a movie about two girls who get stuck at an all-girls boarding school over Christmas break 1971. Unbeknownst to them, a gang of cult killers are on their way with the intention of raising a demon, and things go exactly as sideways as you hope they would. So I am working on some new scripts now. My wife, Jen Wexler, who directed The Sacrifice Game and co-wrote it with me, is also working on some cool projects now. So maybe there'll be more to announce by the time this comes out or early next year, but definitely, if you're building a cool Christmas horror list, give it a look.
Hell yes. Oh, that's exciting.
I absolutely endorse it. I also think you should check out Jen Wexler's first feature, The Ranger, which is a ton of fun.
I didn't know that was her. That movie slaps. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. I had no idea.
That was a lot of fun as well, and stars Chloe Levine, who's also in The Sacrifice Game.
Yes, and Chloe Levine is excellent in The Sacrifice Game, and one of the things I want to give a shout out to Sacrifice Game for outstanding child performance by Georgia Akin. Is that how you say her last name?
That's
Akin?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
She's terrific. Like, and I find like sometimes, it can be a tall ask. I mean, she's older now than she was when you shot Sacrifice Game, but in the movie she's about, 12 or 13 years old, and she is so good, and she does a lot of really has to do a lot of heavy lifting at times in that movie. And I think with actors of that age, sometimes they can be a little stilted and a little unnatural, and she is great in that movie.
She's phenomenal, and she's also in a movie that's playing, or has just played Brooklyn Horror as well, called Lucid, where she plays the younger version of the main character, who is played by her older sister. So
Hey,
that's kind of
awesome.
perfect casting.
Oh,
That's
I love
amazing.
that. I love that. That's so cool. Oh, Jared's
Yeah,
like, my friend Sean's going to come on, and I didn't look into it. And I'm like, oh my God, I would have been nerding out so much harder. Oh my God.
No, yeah. If you check out Jen Wexler's movies and some of the stuff that Sean is highlighting here, you're going to find something that you love. If you enjoy the show that we bring to you every single week, the best way to do that is to go on whatever apparatus you are using right now to listen to this podcast. If it has the function to rate and review the show, please do so. Give us a 5-star rating, maybe a little review about what you like about the show. It just helps us reach a wider audience and, just more eyeballs, especially people who are doing that horror podcast searching around spooky season time. That's always really helpful to us. If you want to email Steve or myself with comments or questions, you can do so at puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram to keep up on kind of a day-to-day basis with what we have going on. The show's Instagram is puppetmasters_castlefreaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jared or Steve at Minotaur Matador. You'll find our updates on Threads and Blue Sky, as well as audio versions of the show on YouTube. We have a Facebook group for the podcast, and we also promote in some other horror-related Facebook groups. It's a lot, and it's not even the only show that Steve has to promote. So, Steve, what else would you like to tell our listeners about right now?
Well, I also host a show called Cinema Arcade. That is cinema and arcade mashed together. That's because that's what we're doing. We are watching movies and then playing the video games based on those movies to see how they contrast or compare or detract from each other. We have lots and lots of fun stuff. We just finished up our whole month of horror movies and games. Lots of fun things to talk about, including Halloween, From Dusk Till Dawn, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. As of this recording, I'm not sure exactly what we're getting into. I'm shuffling a few things around, but I know we will have recently talked about The Emperor's New Groove, Willow, a couple of other fun things. So definitely check that out. And be sure to check us out next week because Pulp Noir-Vember is continuing for the rest of the entire month. We're going to be following up this viewing with another film that recently got a noir release, and that's a film called Dr. Moreau's House of Pain. I'm not too familiar with what that movie's about, but I can make a few guesses. Yeah.
It's it's Marlon Brando. There's like a little guy playing a piano. All the hits.
Yeah. David Thewlis, of course. Yeah. I need him in there. I tried to rewatch that movie recently. It is bizarre. It is so weird. Like it's. I wish it were more entertaining as a movie. Like I wish it was kind of like so slow as a movie, because I would really recommend people check it out just because it's deeply insane. But it's a little slow. Anyway, that's a side tangent. But we're actually going to be talking about Dr. Moreau's House of Pain. We will be watching that next week. Thank you again to Sean Redlitz for being here. Delightful to have you, and we will see you all next week.
Yeah, be sure to, you guys know you're going to hear more anecdotes about the island of Dr. Moreau next week. So I hope you're in store for some of those. And yes, Sean, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Everyone check out The Sacrifice Game if you're looking for some holiday horror to watch. And we will see you all next week as Noir-Vember continues.